Cincinnati, Ohio, situated on the banks of the Ohio River, is a dynamic city renowned for its rich history and diverse cultural offerings. Adorned with iconic structures like the Great American Tower, the city boasts a thriving art scene, historic neighborhoods, and a passionate sports culture. In the 1930s, Cincinnati faced the harsh impact of the Great Depression, which affected both the economy and the daily lives of its residents. However, the city persevered and maintained its spirit, laying the foundation for the vibrant metropolis it would become in the following decades. Against this spirited backdrop, a unique crime unfolded in 1931, leaving an indelible mark on the city. The story begins with a young couple from Cincinnati, Ohio, 27 years old Joseph Edward McLean and 22 years old Mildred Dedden. They exchanged vows on October 6, 1925, filled with enthusiasm as they embarked on a new chapter of their lives, eagerly awaiting the arrival of their first child. On November 29, 1925, their daughter Marion McLean was born. Despite their youth and limited resources, they had everything they needed to nurture their growing family. Unfortunately, their idyllic family life did not withstand the challenges of the Great Depression. As job opportunities became scarce, Joseph relocated to Phoenix, Arizona, in search of employment around 1930, while Mildred remained in Cincinnati, Ohio, balancing work and the responsibilities of raising their daughter alone. Over time, their separation became permanent, and they decided to go their separate ways. Mildred and Marion resided in a tenement building on Pendleton Street. As 1931 came to a close, the holiday season was in full swing for many, but 6-year-old Marion's home did not share the same festive spirit. During that autumn, Marion underwent a tonsillectomy, which kept her confined to the hospital and then housebound for a period of 14 weeks. However, on the 17th of December in 1931, she was feeling much better and had a strong desire to go outside and meet her friends to play on the streets. Surprisingly, it was a warm Thursday, almost resembling the arrival of spring. Taking this into consideration, Mildred granted her permission to go outside, but with a gentle reminder to stay close by and not wander too far. This was the first time in several months that Marion had been allowed to venture beyond the confines of their home. Little did Mildred know that this seemingly innocent decision would forever haunt her. "I love you, Mother. Will you make sure that old Santa Claus brings me all sorts of toys?" These were the last words Mildred would ever hear from her beloved daughter. Adorned in a blue chinchilla coat, a checkered blue and gray dress, a matching blue hat, and black stockings, Marion eagerly stepped outside. However, she never joined her playmates. In less than 20 minutes after descending the 4 flights of stairs from their apartment, she fell into the clutches of a stranger who swiftly abducted her and vanished from the scene. This heart-wrenching incident took place right in front of a drugstore on Pendleton Street, and the vigilant druggist immediately alerted the police. The authorities promptly sprang into action, scouring every street and sidewalk in search of any trace of Marion, but she remained elusive. As the officers interviewed witnesses, crucial details began to emerge. The man last seen with Marion was described as approximately 6 feet tall, weighing around 170 pounds, thin, and with a dark complexion that hinted at a foreign heritage. He was dressed in a dark suit, and his age was estimated to be between 35 and 40 years old. Upon receiving the devastating news, Mildred was overcome with grief, her heart shattered into countless pieces. She wept in fear, tormented by the thought of potential harm befalling her precious little girl. Joseph, too, upon hearing the news, immediately made his way from Arizona to join in the desperate search. The entire community was deeply affected by this tragedy. It was not just a loss for a single family. The entire city felt the weight of this sorrow. Cincinnati experienced one of its gloomiest Christmases ever, with everyone fervently praying for the safe return of the missing child. Beneath the shared hope, a sense of unease persisted. the police released Marion's photo and description, appealing to the public for help. Marion, a child standing at 3 feet 6 tall and weighing 40 pounds, had light blonde hair, fair skin, blue eyes, and a distinctive strawberry birthmark on her shoulder blade. The Inquirer, a tabloid newspaper, offered a $1,000 reward for any information leading to Marion's safe return and the capture of the kidnapper, prompting the community to take action. Marion's image was featured on the front pages of nearly every newspaper in town, resulting in an influx of tips from concerned citizens. On December 18, 1931, a Newport woman reported seeing 2 gypsy women dragging a girl along 8th Street. 2 police officers were sent to nearby camps in response, but found no leads. At the same time, police hurried downtown after reports of a man carrying Marion in a sack into a hotel. However, it turned out to be a false alarm as the man was a ventriloquist. Tensions rose over the weekend, leading to city officials announcing the start of an extensive manhunt in Cincinnati on December 21, 1931. 4,000 Boy Scouts were mobilized to search the Pendleton area, while over 100 firefighters conducted thorough searches of all homes, as people were more likely to cooperate with firefighters than with the police. 5 days after her abduction, on December 22, 1931, just before 10 p.m., Marion was found in the cellar of a house at 428 East 12th Street. The house belonged to a 45-year-old shoemaker, Charles Bischoff, and was only a block away from Marion's residence. Surprisingly, it wasn't a Boy Scout or a firefighter who discovered Marion. As the search for Marion unfolded, a crowd gathered to witness the diligent efforts of the firefighters as they meticulously combed through every corner and space in search of the missing girl. Interestingly, just a few doors away from where this was happening, Charles Bischoff emerged from his cellar in a sudden rush, urgently exclaiming, "A dead child! A dead child in the cellar!" Holding the lifeless body of 6-year-old Marion in his arms, he revealed the tragic outcome. Mildred arrived at the scene immediately after receiving the news of her daughter's body being discovered. While the location of her child was now known, the heartbreaking truth remained that they couldn't be reunited in life. This posed a significant challenge for law enforcement officials, who were tasked with not only investigating the case, but also providing support to the grieving mother. The sight of 2 tear stains, one on each cheek of the deceased child, served as a poignant reminder of the immense sorrow that even the typically unemotional men in law enforcement couldn't escape. These tear stains were a testament to the fact that Marion had cried incessantly during her time with her abductor until her life was tragically cut short. The Christmas of 1931 left a haunting darkness in the hearts of the people of Cincinnati. Marion's body, apart from the black satin bloomers and a portion of her underclothing that had been torn off, remained fully clothed. The discarded bloomers and underclothing were found nearby, and a small knife stuck in the ground near her body showed no signs of bloodstains, leading the police to dismiss it as a potential clue. According to the autopsy reports, the child had endured repeated assaults between the time of her abduction and the moment death mercilessly ended her suffering. Her torso bore signs of mutilation, and she had been choked. The cause of Marion's death was determined to be shock and hemorrhage resulting from the assaults. The autopsy also revealed that she had been dead for at least 24 hours before being discovered. However, it remained uncertain whether Marion was alive or deceased when she was placed in that cellar. There was no indication of an attack in the damp cellar, leading detectives to speculate that the assault likely occurred elsewhere, possibly in the immediate vicinity. This raised the perplexing question of why no one had heard anything, especially considering the heightened awareness surrounding Marion's story and the community's vigilance against suspicious activities. Bischoff claimed that he had gone to the cellar that morning to gather kindling wood and discovered the body, but insisted that it wasn't there on Monday night. This raised doubts about how Marion's body could have been placed there overnight without anyone noticing. Another puzzling question arose. Monday night had heavy rain, and any brief exposure to the elements would have soaked non-waterproof clothing. If Marion's attacker had brought her into the cellar on the same night, they must have protected her with a waterproof cloak, as her clothes were found dry. Detectives also considered the possibility that Bischoff might be lying. After days of suspicion, Charles Bischoff was apprehended. Marion's body was laid to rest 2 days after Christmas, with 6 young girls carrying the casket of their 6-year-old playmate, dressed in a pink dress with silk stockings and satin slippers. The small casket was draped in pink velvet. Joseph, Marion's father, was flown from Phoenix, Arizona by National Airlines to Covington, arriving in time for the funeral. Despite their long separation and impending divorce, he and Mildred mourned side by side at the loss of their child. The funeral took place at the now demolished St. Patrick's Catholic Church in Covington, Kentucky. Marion was buried at Mother of God Cemetery on Latonia Avenue, Kenton Vale, Kentucky. Following the funeral, Mildred granted an interview to a newspaper, expressing the immense difficulty of coping with the loss of her only child. She expressed the heartbreaking realization that upon her return from work, she would no longer hear the pitter-patter of her little one's footsteps, nor would she have the joy of listening to her daughter's innocent babbling. Mildred also conveyed the poignant fact that Marion's final wish was to receive gifts from Santa, yet her home was now filled with toys that remained untouched by the laughter of her child playing with them. A photograph published in the newspaper depicted Mildred holding all the Christmas toys intended for Marion. The only thing Mildred sought now was justice. On the other hand, despite having Charles Bischoff in custody, the detectives lacked sufficient evidence to definitively prove his guilt. The year 1932 arrived without shedding any light on the mystery. The police meticulously searched every corner of Bischoff's cellar, even excavating the dirt floor in their quest for evidence, but luck evaded them. They employed advanced scientific methods to test Marion's stomach for traces of opium, hoping to determine if she had been drugged. In a thorough sweep, they scrutinized every home within a mile radius of the cellar, hoping to uncover the crime scene. Despite these exhaustive efforts, no promising leads emerged. Throughout this period, Bischoff remained imprisoned, persistently proclaiming his innocence, even as investigators subjected him to intense questioning on numerous occasions. Captain Lynn Black, a 34-year-old World War I veteran who had recently joined the Hamilton County Sheriff's Force, was driven by ambition to solve Marion's case. Feeling the pressure, Black devised a plan that would set the stage for a twisted tale in criminal investigation, marked by a dramatic confession that would be remembered for its theatrics. Black's strategy was put into action on January 11, 1932, which marked Bischoff's 20th day in jail without formal charges. After rehearsing with other deputies, Black disguised himself and burst into the room where Bischoff was being guarded in his jail cell, brandishing a revolver. Black, after locking up the deputies in the bathroom, proceeded to take Bischoff to the basement, disguising himself as a relative of Marion. He asserted that he knew Bischoff was responsible for her death. Under the threat of a gun, Bischoff reluctantly confessed that he may have killed her, but had no recollection of it. Continuing the charade, Black escorted Bischoff back to his cell and left him there. As planned, the deputies were eventually freed from the bathroom and swiftly apprehended the disguised Black. They forcefully guided him into a nearby room. From the adjacent room, Bischoff could hear the sounds of blows, punches, and agonizing screams. Meanwhile, the deputies were busy banging tables with books and smearing Black with red ink. After a few minutes, the supposedly beaten man was dragged past Bischoff's cell, seemingly shattering his resolve. Bischoff then confessed to the deputies that he might have killed the girl in a fit of madness. Without delay, they had him sign a confession to that effect. The following day, he presented his confession, which had undergone several revisions to the reporters. Observers noted his confusion during the interview, as he occasionally retracted parts of his statement. Nevertheless, he admitted to the murder of Marion McLean, aligning with the authorities' desired outcome. "The electric chair awaits me," Bischoff uttered. They have built a case against me based on circumstantial evidence. That's it. They have incriminating evidence. In his confession, Bischoff provided a detailed account of the kidnapping, stating that he had taken Marion to his cellar on December 17, 1931, after abducting her. He confessed to assaulting her and leaving her there, injured but alive, with a sweater used as a gag. According to his narrative, when he returned on Friday morning to check on her, she was already deceased. Bischoff claimed to have cleaned the area where the assault occurred and relocated her to another section of the cellar. Contrary to the statements made by the coroner and pathologist, who claimed that she died on Monday, the police disregarded Bischoff's account as a falsehood and dismissed any discussion of an alternative crime scene. Captain Lynn Black and his fellow deputies were commended for their clever tactic that resulted in a confession. The trial of Charles Bischoff on January 13, 1932, in Cincinnati became a significant spectacle, with the courtroom filled to capacity. To maintain order, 20 deputy sheriffs were stationed due to the overwhelming crowd. Accompanied by guards, Charles Bischoff made his way through the sea of spectators and stood before Judge Charles S. Bell. Already indicted for Marion's murder the previous day, authorities sought to determine if he was responsible for any other crimes. Prior to Marion's tragic abduction and murder, Cincinnati had experienced similar disappearances. The first case involved 9-year-old Emily Gump, who vanished on November 9, 1919, after playing with other children in her neighborhood following an event at St. John Church. Less than 2 years later, on August 21, 1921, another 9-year-old named Frida Hornberger disappeared after leaving a bakery near Gump's residence. There was no trace of her. Interestingly, both children lived near Charles Bischoff's tenement, leading authorities to suspect his involvement in these disappearances. During the courtroom proceedings, Bischoff mostly responded with nods and silence. When questioned about whether he had harmed any child other than Marion, Bischoff denied it. Despite his outward calmness, he showed no apparent distress over his situation and maintained that he was sorry but unable to control his actions. Judge Bell granted him an extension until 2 p.m. the following day to designate his attorney for the trial. However, the trial never actually took place. On February 9, 1932, Judge Bell decided to send Bischoff to the Lima State Hospital for the criminally insane for a 30-day evaluation. During this period, medical professionals concluded that he suffered from delusions. Bischoff remained at the hospital until his passing in 1947 at the age of 60. Unfortunately, the Ohio Department of Corrections does not possess any information regarding his place of burial. Presently, apart from the fading newspaper clippings and her gravestone, there are few reminders of Marion McLean, the 6-year-old who was abducted and murdered in 1931, casting a somber shadow over Cincinnati during the Christmas season. People still hold differing opinions on Bischoff's innocence.